Okay. So, yeah, as I just said, we're going to be reviewing a bunch of things, but we're also going to be talking about the structure of the program and looking at some cases where there's some limitations to what we can do. There are ways to do everything that you would want to do with Scratch. It is like, you can kind of find different ways to do it. But the program is really well designed to do some really basic programming stuff. But when we start to get into more complex structures, it starts to get a little more challenging. And so this will be kind of our final lesson on Scratch. We're going to, in a couple weeks, start working on P5. P5 is definitely going to be a little bit harder at first, but as we get used to it, we'll see that there's a lot more that we can do with it. That's why you should probably not wear headphones while I'm talking. Okay. So I'm gonna make a couple of assets. I'm gonna give the birds right now just get eaten by the cat. They can't really do anything. So I'm gonna give them like a weapon to use. So I'm gonna make some art for that first. I'm gonna go over to Piskel. And I'll let the birds like drop little, would be a good weapon for a cat. I'll let the birds drop little mouses onto the cat to attack the cat. So I'm gonna make them kind of small. So I'm gonna make them like 16 by 16. And I'm just gonna draw a little brown mouse with a little tail. So I'll just draw like a little mouse head and a little mouse body and a little tail like that, and maybe some ears like that. Okay. Let me center this a little bit. And I'm gonna actually just duplicate this frame and just change the tail a little bit just to give it a little bit of an animation. Okay. And let's give it a couple eyes. So let's give it some eyes. Okay. And then let's make a little, when it lands on the mouse or on the cat, it'll like bite it or something. I don't know. Let's just make it like explode actually. That'll be easier. Okay, so let's just erase this. So it'll be like a little mouse bomb that the bird can throw. Okay. Okay, I'm just kind of doing this pretty quickly, just to get these assets ready. So we'll just have the mouse kind of explode. So I'm gonna save this as mouse bomb and save that Piskel file. And then I'm gonna export it as well as a sprite sheet. So I'm gonna use the zip and export my sprites, call this mouse, and download this as a zip file. I also need a couple new sounds. So I'm gonna go to JFXer and I'll make a couple new sounds. So one is for when the mouse spawns. So maybe I'll use a laser sound for that. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'll export that. And then when it hits the cat, we'll do like a little explosion sound. For some reason the audio in here is kind of weird. Okay, that's good enough. Let's just go with that. So I've got all my assets ready. I'm gonna go over to my Finder and just organize them a little bit. So I'll put my art into the art folder and the sounds into the sound folder. So my mouse, here, I'll make a new window real quick. So I'm gonna drag my mouse piscal over here. Hey, how's it going? And my mouse bomb. And I'll open this up. Okay, so I've got my sprites there. And then I'll open up the sounds folder and throw these guys in here. So I'll call this one mouse spawn. And I'll call this one mouse attack. Okay, so I've got all my assets ready, my art and my sounds. So let's go back over to Scratch. And so we'll review a little bit creating some objects in Scratch, but we're also going to connect the mouse to the bird. So let's make our mouse sprite first. So I'm going to create a sprite by clicking Upload. And I'm going to go to my art folder, go to mouse bomb, and just choose the first image. And so then I've got this new sprite. It's kind of hard to see with the size of my window, but it's down here. So I'll just call this mouse. And then if I go to costumes, I've got mouse 0. I'm going to add the rest of these sprites in here. So I'll just call this mouse 0 is fine, mouse 1, and then I'll call this attack 1 and attack 2. Then I'll add in my sounds. So the sounds are relative to each sprite. So if I want to add these sounds, I'll go to Upload Sound and add in my mouse attack and my mouse spawn. And so the mouse is going to behave a little bit differently than the other sprites that we've created. So the bird is going to spawn the mouse. And so our mouse by default will not be part of the scene. So when we start the game, we're just going to hide the mouse. And all of our mouse objects are going to be clones. There's not going to be like an original mouse because they're only going to come from events from the bird. I'm going to add when I start as a clone. And that's where most of the sort of mouse behaviors will happen. So we'll have when I start as a clone, we're going to show the mouse. And we'll start the animation. So I'll make a little animation block. So I'll call this animation. And I'll just do a basic animation here. So I'll have a forever block. And we'll just go between our two states. So I'll go to looks and go to switch costume. And I'll go to mouse 0. And I'll add a little weight after that, 0.2 or something like that. And then I'll just duplicate these two blocks and switch to mouse 1. So now when we start as a clone, we are going to start our animation. And if we click the green button, the mouse will just disappear. So basically, by default, all of our mouses will be clones. So we'll come back and add a couple things here in a minute, but now we're going to go modify our bird to create the mouse clones. And there's a couple things that we're going to need to do there to basically pass some data. So the main new thing that we're going to be talking about, it uses all the stuff that we've done before, but we need to save some data, which is where the bird is, and pass that to the mouse. So it kind of like appears like the mouse is coming from where the bird is. So I'm going to click on my bird, and we'll have to make some adjustments here. Most of it's going to stay the same, but we're going to add sort of a new section to handle the mouse spawn. So I'm going to make a new block for this. I'm going to call it mouse spawn. And we're going to define it over here. And we'll do it when we start the game and when we start as a clone. So let's duplicate this guy. We'll do our mouse spawn. Put that up here. And we'll do it with this guy as well. So I'll duplicate that and do a mouse spawn here. And so with the mouse spawn, what we want to do is take the current XY of the bird. Let's stop this. We want to take the current XY of the bird and pass that to where the new mouse is going to spawn. And so we need to use some variables to do this, and we need the variables to be global variables. And one of the limitations here is that we can't create new objects by giving them variables the way that we normally would in a programming language. So that's what we're going to do when we do similar stuff in P5. We'll see that we have a lot more flexibility over there. For now, what we're going to do is just use a couple of global variables. We'll save the position, and then we'll set it when we spawn the mouse. The one drawback of that is that we can't really spawn two mouses at the same time, because if we try to do that, what's going to happen is we'll assign the same position to both mouses, basically. So with our mouse spawn, we want to set a delay so it doesn't happen all at the same time. So I'm going to start with that first. I'm going to make a wait block here. And then I'm going to set like a random delay at the very beginning so that each clone of our bird kind of does this differently. So I'm going to put a random number in my wait section, and I'll do like 1 to 5 seconds. And after that, we'll start spawning mouses as the birds fall. So we'll put in a forever block here, and we will start to spawn a mouse. So we'll say create a clone of the mouse. And then we'll put a little wait block here so we don't create tons and tons of clones all the time. So we'll just wait, and we'll wait a second. Let's put another random block right there, but we'll wait 1 to 2 seconds. So what'll happen with this block is the whole thing will wait a random amount of time, 1 to 5 seconds. And then for as long as the game is running in this forever block, we'll create a clone of the mouse every 1 to 2 seconds. When we create a clone of the mouse, so here's the part where we want the mouse clone to have the position of the bird. So if we see how it's going to look right now, and let me actually, well, let's see if this works, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so we see there's a mouse here. My birds need a little debugging, but we should see another mouse at some point. Oh, they're actually all stacking up here. So you can see every time a new mouse gets cloned, it's in the same position. But what we want is for it to be in the position of the bird. Okay, so what we need is some global variables. We're gonna go to variable and make a couple new variables. So I'll make a variable here, call this spawn underscore x, so the x position where we want to spawn. And this is going to be for all sprites because it needs to be read by the mouse sprite. And then I'm going to make another variable. This is spawn y. And I don't need to look at these, so I'm just going to turn that off. And so when I spawn a mouse, which is right here in the mouse spawn section of my bird, I'm going to set those variables. So I'm going to set them before I create the clone. So I'm going to put 2 of these set variable guys in here, and I'll set my spawn x. And here's where I can use the position of the bird. So I'll go, let's set this to spawn y. Let's go to the motion section, and now I can just grab the x position and the y position, and this will be relative to each bird, including the clones of the birds. But because it's offset in time, it's only going to do this, we're going to kind of just use these variables, pass them to our clone, and then we can ignore them. Okay, so in our mouse section, when we start as a clone here, we're going to set our position first. So we're going to go to XY, and we'll grab those variables. So we have spawn x, spawn y. Then we'll show the clone, and then we'll start the animation. Let's also play our sound. So we'll start the mouse spawn sound there. Okay, so there's one other part of my mouse component, which is when it hits the player. So we'll add in another one of these blocks. When I start as a clone, we'll make a new block, and we'll call this player collision. And we'll throw that on there. And so our player collision is going to be really similar to the bird collision, but slightly different. So we'll throw in a forever block here, and we'll use our if statement. So we'll check if we're colliding with the player. So we'll look for if we're touching the player, then we're gonna just game over. You could have like multiple lives and stuff. You could do some math to do that, but just to keep things simple, I'm just gonna do a game over. So what I'll do is I'll go to events and broadcast game over or end game. And before we do that, let's play the hit sound. So we'll say play the mouse attacks sound and then broadcast game over, and then we'll hide. Or actually, we'll delete the this copy of the clone. So we'll say delete this clone. Also, if we hit the edge, we're gonna want to delete the clone. Oh, I didn't even make the movement. Okay, I do have to make a couple extra things for this. So we need a movement block as well, so the mouse is actually moving. So let's do that. Let's make another block and call it movement. And it's just gonna move down the page. So we'll go to motion and we'll just say change Y by 10. And if we hit the bottom, actually we need a little forever loop here. So we'll change Y by 10. And we'll wait a little bit. Or no, let's not wait. Let's just change Y. That might be too fast. We can test it. But then we also want to, if we hit the bottom of the screen, we want to reset it. So let's say if we're touching the edge, then actually we'll just delete it. So we'll just have the mouses delete when they get to the bottom. So let's go to events or control, and let's delete this clone. Okay, we could probably do a lot of different things with this, but let's try, oh, I forgot to put this in the actual movement block. Let's do that. Okay, let's try this now. Oh, we got the mouses going the wrong way. All right, let's set this to -10. Okay, so now the birds can shoot these little mouse guys. And let's see if one of the mouses hits me. Okay, so when the mouse gets me, we start the game over. Okay, so there's obviously a lot of ways that I could refine that, but I don't want to take up too much time because I want you guys to have some time to work on your projects. But the main thing that I want to look at is now, as the game gets more complex, as we add more components, then we kind of have to do these goofy things like passing the variables into another object. And we have a lot of different blocks that are kind of doing the same thing. So what we're going to see later in the semester when we move into P5 is that when we start writing our code in a sort of text-based language, we're going to have a lot more control over how we organize the code, how we reuse the code, how we do these different things. So there's a lot of stuff that I would want to implement here. Like I haven't even set up the second animation for the mouse. There's a lot of little details that are kind of hard to do here because I have to jump around between all these different parts. So I can refine this a lot, but the main point is that, Scratch is really nice for learning some of these basic ideas, but we'll see when we get over to P5 how much more flexible it is as a programming language. Anyway, I'm going to stop here so we have some class time.